So the next section that I chose is Context is Everything. And again, I chose Florence Soap because what she said speaks to me and speaks to how I was raised. So I wanted to share, when people read aloud to you, they often choose things that kind of reveal a little bit about themselves as well. So Florence says, stories are very important to Cherokee people. Stories have always played a big part in my life. When we were little, we played near a big cave near the water, but we were not allowed to go back into that cave. Once near the cave, we found safety pins, pottery, little bitty plates, and things that belonged to the little people who lived in those caves. Lots of times people use spirit protection to protect the house so the little people won't come in. We used to live in a house where little people would rattle the pots and pans unless we left food out for them. When we left the food out for them, they left the pots and pans alone. There is a story about an older couple who lived up in the hills by Evansville Creek. They had a little girl. The little people took the little girl. The family and a lot of other people looked for her but could never find her. One day they came along a very rocky area near the water, and they found the little girl sitting very near the stream. She did not want to go home. It is believed that she was in the company of the little people. She chose to stay with them, but her parents brought her home anyway. Shortly thereafter, she died. We do not have sweat lodges, but we did have a plant with leaves like tobacco that they would put under a blanket, roll you up in the blanket, and then heat the blanket to make you sweat to purify you. Also, I remember when I was a girl, they would sit us in a chair or lay us on the floor and cover us with a blanket and place a medicine plant and a pot of hot coals under the blanket to make us sweat and to purify us. It is a good medicine. If that same plant is kept for 1 or 2 years, it can be boiled and drunk to cure a cough. We are losing a lot of our ways, and a lot of knowledge is being lost when older people leave. We can ask God to help us retain our ways. On the subject of womanhood, Florence Soap again says, my mother taught me how to be a woman. She kept a beautiful garden with beans, corn, potatoes, yams, tomatoes, cucumbers, lettuce, and mustard. We canned everything we ate back then. We made hominy out of the corn, and we ground our own cornmeal. We made our own flour with wheat. When we were able to store potatoes through even the coldest winter weather, we lined the potatoes on hay and then covered them in the hay. We made big barrels of sauerkraut. We ate squirrel, rabbit, fish, and hog meat, which we dried, preserved with salt, and stored in our smokehouse. When we were children, we would go hunting for rabbit. When it snowed, we would wrap our feet in burlap and go out and hunt rabbit. At night, we would find robins and use a flashlight to startle them, then hit them on the head. The elders would stay up late cleaning the robins or the rabbits we brought home. There was no separation between boys and the girls. The boys helped out with the household chores, and the girls went out to hunt. Even in the snow, we very rarely had any free time, but when we did have time, the girls and boys played with marbles, hide and go seek, or other games we made up from our own imagination. We lived in a log house with no windows. During the day in the wintertime, we never closed the door so we would have light in our cabin. We only had one room with a stove, a table for our meals, and shelves to store things. Mom and Dad had a bed, but all the children slept on a blanket on the floor. We had a lot of chores: hoeing cotton and corn, cutting and gathering wood, pulling weeds, or doing other work. During the summer, we would hunt huckleberries all day long. We could sell the berries for 25 cents a gallon in town. We would use the money to buy salt or coffee. This practical knowledge and ability to do with what we had was very helpful to me as an adult. And the next section that I chose was about love and acceptance, and I chose the piece by Wilma Mankiller. When I was about 6 years old, I experienced my first powerful feelings of affection or love, not for a person, but for life itself. I don't remember what precipitated this feeling, but I recall sitting in the sun on a rock or a log and feeling full of love. Everything seemed perfect in my world. It must have been spring because there were flowers blooming, the air was fresh, and it was a warm, sunny day. Now, more than 5 decades later, that tremendous affection and love for life still occasionally comes calling. Sometimes I feel it in the stillness of the early morning when I am waiting for the sun to rise over the hills near my home, bringing with it the absolute miracle of a new day. My family taught me a lot about love. My maternal grandmother was affectionate, loving, irreverent, funny, and would pull me down on her lap even when I was a young adult, although she was about half my size. My parents loved one another and were openly affectionate with one another well after their grandchildren. What I learned from my mother is that love is steady, sure, and everlasting. It is not thunder and lightning, a roaring river, or a crashing waterfall. It is a calm, steady stream that never stops flowing. When people talk about love, the love of children always comes to mind. It is one of the most wondrous things on earth. The curiosity, affection, laughter, and hopeful presence of children is an integral part of most meetings and ceremonies I have attended in Indigenous communities. At Cherokee ceremonial grounds and in tradition-oriented societies, the love and respect afforded children is very evident in all aspects of their lives. In 2000, I visited a women's weaving cooperative in a remote village in Rio Negro in Brazil. When the women began to gather in a community center to brief us on the cooperative project, the children knew a meeting was at hand and gathered on a large hand-woven mat. They stayed on the mat and spoke softly to one another during the entire meeting. When the meeting was over, they scattered and began to play again. I had never seen anything like it. And that's the last section that I chose out of this book. And now I am going to get a drink of water, and Trent is going to tell you about the spirit folk.